We've come to the point in the summer where it feels like we need to do just as much work inside as we do outside. The garden is ready to be flipped over for fall, and there are so many things that need to be preserved. We've filled up the deep freezer with tomatoes more than once at this point, and we have lots of sauces that need to be made. The potatoes that weren't very large when we harvested need to be preserved so that they don't go bad, and there are just an abundance of other things that need to be dealt with. Taylor came home from his 9-day work trip, and unfortunately he brought with him a case of a seasonal flu, it seems like. So he was kind of down for the count, and I decided that why not work on all of these inside projects. Unfortunately, after he started to get better, it seems that I came down with this flu, so I have been out of it for a handful of days now, and thankfully I'm starting to feel on the mend. It feels like I haven't filmed things for you guys in so long at this point though. I'm really excited to get back outside in the garden and get the camera turned back on and keep documenting what we're doing. Don't worry though, on the day that I was filming this and preserving all of these things, I was not feeling sick whatsoever. It was before it hit me. As you can see in the background, we have an abundance of peppers coming in, so I decided that I wanted to try and make as much salsa as I could. We only really use like 2 standard salsas throughout the year, and they're both salsas that I make. One of them is just kind of like a fresh pico de gallo that I make in the blender, and so I decided to make a canned version of that. And then we also like corn and black bean salsa, but that's not really tomato based, so I decided to make that later on. And we also had a bunch of carrots that I pulled out of the garden, and since I sowed them directly into hard clay just to see what would happen, we kind of have baby carrots. So I cut them up and I put them in these jars, and I wanted to get them canned because obviously tiny little carrots aren't going to store well unless they're preserved in some sort of way. So I decided to can those, and then also some of our smaller colorful potatoes that wouldn't store well, and I had a full canner load. This blender salsa that I like to make is very, very simple. I try not to add a ton of spices because it really doesn't need them, but it's just like a very fresh tasting salsa, and honestly what we use it most for is to put on top of nachos. The only difference that I made to this canning recipe versus my freshly made fresh eating salsa is I used bottled lime juice as opposed to fresh squeezed, because when you're canning salsa you need a specific acidity level and you can't get that with freshly squeezed lemons or limes, so you need to use bottled lime juice just for safety reasons. It's got a tested specified amount of acidity in it that's required. Another project that I ended up working on this day that I didn't really plan on working on was this leftover sauce that I had. This was all of my scrap pieces, skins, and seeds left over from the last batch of sauce I had made the week previous, and this has just been sitting in my fridge, and because I just hadn't had time to deal with it. However, I needed this stock pot to be able to cook my salsa, so this needed to get dealt with. So basically all I did with this is I scooped it into a fine mesh sieve, and I'm basically just running it through the sieve to get a smooth sauce, and we are going to save all of the skins and seeds from this, and we will put into the dehydrator later. Since this is my first year canning salsa, I decided to put it into pints and half pints, which are jelly jars. And the reason for that is it's just the two of us, and we don't really use the salsa for a ton other than topping nachos with it and other things like that. So I wanted to give us some options with size to see what works best for us, and next year I can kind of adjust from there. I wanted to do pints because there might be some days that we just feel like snacking on this, and who knows, maybe if we have guests over or anything like that, we're just feeling like we want to use more salsa, we can. And if it's just a standard nacho night, we'll just sprinkle the top with a little bit of salsa from the half pints, and then there won't be any waste. I'm just trying to reduce waste with these decisions, so it's just an experiment overall. Now that the salsa is in the canner doing its thing, we're going to deal with the rest of this sauce that we ran through that fine mesh sieve. And I decided that since I already kind of made 7 or more quarts of tomato sauce, which is definitely not enough for the whole year, I just wanted to diversify what we're making a little bit so I can try some recipes this year. So I decided to make pizza sauce out of this little bit that we have here. I'm gonna pick some fresh herbs from the garden, and then we're gonna turn it into some pizza sauce. Every single recipe I made today is a new recipe for me. As far as canning goes, I've never preserved any of this stuff before. So we're definitely newbies, but I am really trying to practice and experiment with things that I know we use often throughout the year, and we're really focusing on things that we do use as opposed to things that are random and fun and we want to try. I'm trying to focus on things that I know we will eat. Another thing that I'm really trying to lean into this year is using every little bit and piece of things that we can. So we are going to dehydrate these tomato skins and seeds. I got pretty much all of the pulp that I could possibly get out of these. This was out of 9-gallon bags of tomatoes, and this is what's left of them. So this is truly mostly just seeds and skins. So we're gonna pop them in there, and then after it's dry, I will grind them into powder, and we can either make tomato paste out of that powder, or we can just add it as a seasoning to soups or pastas or things like that. This was over a 12-hour canning day, and I forgot that dinner was a thing, so we ended up making some leftover spaghetti, and I made homemade pasta the other night, so we made some of that, and then I also made some homemade garlic bread in a little cast iron in the oven, and this is the best garlic bread I've ever had. It definitely replicates like the cheesy Texas toast that you get from the store, but honestly I think it's better. Basically all I did was cut some thick slices of bread, load them up with butter, do way more butter than you think needs to go on them because that's what like gets you the really soft deliciousness of them. Sprinkle garlic and onion powder on them, a little bit of Italian seasoning, grate some mozzarella over it, and then pop them in the oven on broil for a few minutes just until they look nice and crispy and the cheese is melted. And they're so good. Oh yeah, don't forget to add salt too. I haven't gotten around to canning corn yet this year, but I have been getting a little bit of corn on the cob here and there when I can from the store, and I've just been blanching it for like 5 or 6 minutes and then vacuum sealing it into these bags and freezing it in 2-packs, because then I can make it for dinners whenever we're using it as a side or feeling like we want it as a side randomly throughout the year, and we'll be able to taste that sweet summer fresh corn. This table has been an absolute disaster all summer long, and basically it's my ripening station. I pick the tomatoes as soon as they have a blush on them because our bugs have been so bad this year. The leaf-footed bugs are driving me insane, and they're definitely affecting our tomatoes pretty badly. So I'm just letting everything ripen in here as much as I can, which means the table's a disaster. As soon as things get ripe, I pop them into bags and I throw them down in the freezer until I have time to deal with them. We don't really have a pantry storage solution at the moment, so everything is just going on the table until I can afford to build some shelves downstairs. But that's okay, I kind of like looking at it anyway, so I'm not too sad about it. Another little random project that I did this day was I wanted to start practicing fermenting and soaking our bird feed for the chickens and ducks. So I got that going and just kind of set them on the counter with inverted lids so that they can breathe. We are rounding out the night. There is so much canning that happened today. I'm pretty proud of myself for pushing through. This was a really, really long day of canning all by myself. And obviously my little helper here, he was giving me some major moral support. He's not supposed to be on the counter, but that's kind of where he eats sometimes. And we're gonna call that a day. I hope you guys like this video, and I hope to be getting back to our normal style of video soon and back out in the garden. But until then, I hope you have a great week, and I hope you are having a wonderful harvest year. Thanks for watching.